Hello and welcome back, or if you're new here, welcome to my channel. I'm Rachel, a self-taught multimedia artist sharing my artist journey, and today I'm going to talk about 5 ways that you can develop your own individual art style. So before we get started, for those of you who don't know, I used to be a realism artist. I especially did a lot of realism, colored pencil, pet, and wildlife portraits. And then around 2020, I decided I wanted to make a change away from realism. And this is not to disparage anyone that enjoys doing photorealism, I just no longer was enjoying it. But my biggest struggle when I realized I wanted to move away from it was I had no idea what style I wanted to start doing, and I didn't really know where to start in terms of developing a style. So I spent the last few years working on it, and these are the best 5 things that I learned along the way. Before we get started, I do want to give a quick piece of advice, and that is that I know that finding your art style, especially for newer or younger artists, can feel really overwhelming and really important, especially in the day of social media where we're constantly told to niche down. But I do want to say I don't think you should stress about it too much. For one thing, there are a lot of prominent and successful artists that don't necessarily work in one concrete style, but they still are successful and their work is still recognizable as theirs. And that's because no matter what you create or what style you work in, there is always going to be that human touch that makes your art uniquely yours. For example, the artist Austin Keaton has a great quote in the book Steal Like an Artist, where he says, "Don't worry about unity, what unifies your work is the fact that you make it." And I think that sums it up really well. So that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So to start off, the number one thing I would recommend doing if you are looking to develop your own art style is to learn the fundamentals. And I know you might be rolling your eyes right now. Trust me, I feel you, I've been there. This was the thing that I struggled with the most. For one thing, I thought that I had a pretty good understanding of the fundamentals, and it wasn't until I started making this switch that I realized I didn't have as strong of a grasp on these things as I thought I did. And it was the biggest thing that helped me improve in both my technical skills and in developing a style. And I think a lot of people get a little bit confused on what the fundamentals are. There's kind of a lot of different notions about it. For one thing, if you go to art school, you might be taught that the fundamentals are really the fundamentals of composition, but I am talking about the fundamentals of drawing. And the most important aspect of that, I would say, is learning form. And those are the 3-dimensional shapes that make up everything around us. So that is your spheres, your cylinders, your pyramids, your cubes, and your cones. And when you're learning those, it's important to not only be able to recognize how those forms make up shapes, but you should learn how to manipulate those forms, how they interact in 3-dimensional space, i.e. perspective, as well as how they interact with light. Some other things I would recommend learning when you're learning the fundamentals are also composition and storytelling, as well as color theory, and then if you plan on doing any sort of drawings of people, I would recommend having a good understanding of anatomy. So why does learning the fundamentals help you develop a style? That is because the fundamentals are literally the building blocks that we are going to use to do everything. And no matter how stylized you want your work to be, you have to have an understanding of these things for your art to look good, essentially. And once you know these, you can manipulate them however you want to suit your own style. And I know there may be artists out there who seem like they don't know the fundamentals necessarily and do really good stylized work, but I would say that they probably do have an understanding of them and that they are more likely the exception to the rule than the rule. So, learn your fundamentals and that will greatly help you improve in developing an art style. The second step I recommend taking is one that you've probably heard many times before, and I know it's not the most fun thing, but it's so important that I think it bears repeating, and that is practice. There's that saying, practice makes progress, and that's so true. The only surefire way to get better at anything, including creating your art style, is to practice. And the more you practice drawing, not only will it improve your technical skills, but it will help you develop that natural style, that human touch that we talked a little bit about earlier. And that is because the more you draw, the more you're going to realize what techniques you like to use, how you like to draw, what subjects you enjoy drawing, what materials you enjoy using, as well as what things work and don't work for you, what you think looks good and what doesn't. And then the more you practice, the more you can build on and expand those things. So again, I know it's a little bit tedious, but the more you draw, the more your style will naturally develop. So this brings me to step 3, which goes hand in hand with step 2, and that is experiment. And by experiment, I mean experiment with all sorts of things. Drawing different subjects, using different materials, different techniques, experiment with your line quality, with how you shade things. I mean, anything you can think of, experiment with it. Because the truth is, you're not going to know what you enjoy making unless you try it. So even if it's a medium you don't necessarily think you have an interest with, if you get the opportunity to, go ahead and give it a try. One great way to do this is to have a sketchbook where it is just your experimenting sketchbook. That means it's not something that you are sharing with other people, posting on social media. It is just for you. And that way you don't have that pressure of making something that looks good. Just have fun and go for it. And an important thing to keep in mind when you're doing this is that the art you enjoy looking at might be different than the art that you enjoy making. So for example, I really like things like children's book style art. I really enjoy looking at that. It is very different from the art I enjoy making, and I would not have known that unless I experimented in a bunch of different styles. Another really good way to do this is to participate and draw this in your style challenges. Even if you don't think you have a style yet, this kind of helps develop those creative problem-solving skills. How would I change this in a way that I enjoy making art? So go ahead and give that a try. Like I said, just experiment, have fun, see where it takes you. The fourth step that I recommend taking is then to go ahead and find inspiration. A really great way to do this is to build a Pinterest board of art that you like. And when you're doing this, don't worry about that art being in the same or even a similar style. Go ahead and just add as much different art as you want to. Anything that you see that you like, go ahead and add it. And then once you have a pretty good amount of art in that board, go through and look at each picture and write down what things you like about it. So for example, it could be the color, the lighting, the subject, the quality of the lines. It can be anything as simple as, like, is it really three-dimensional? Like, what emotions does it bring up? What story does it tell? Go through and just as many things as you like about that piece of art, what made it speak to you, write that down. Once you've done that for all of the art in your portfolio, or at least a good amount of it, go through and see what things you had in common. And those are the things that you should focus on incorporating into your own art. So for example, for me, when I did this, the biggest things I learned were that I really enjoy art of animals and art inspired by nature, and I really enjoy vibrant, bright, bold color. So those are things that I have worked really hard at incorporating into my art, regardless of what medium I am working in. You can also do this by going to museums. I think we have just as much learned from historical art as we do from contemporary art. Do the same thing. Go through and identify what speaks to you about the art that you like. So once we have found our inspiration, that leads us to step 5, which is learn from other artists. So once you have identified what elements in art that you really enjoy, I would go ahead and find a few artists that exemplify these elements. And once you do that, study them. There is no such thing as a completely original technique or style, and artists for centuries have known this. One of the best ways to develop your own art style is to study other people's. And one way to do this that is an old way is to do master studies, as that is where you literally copy another artist's artwork. Now I do want to put a huge disclaimer out there to be careful. This is, again, just a way to study. Do not post this on social media. Do not ever claim or infer that this art is your own. This is for your own personal study. And when you're doing this, it is not just trying to copy their work to look exactly like it. It is to try and understand what techniques they used to develop this style that you're looking at. Another similar way you can do this, and it's actually a method that I prefer, is something that I learned during the one painting class I took in college, and that is to find one artist whose style you really admire, and again, study and figure out what elements make it their style, and then pick a subject that is completely different from anything that they have drawn or painted or sculpted or whatever. So, for example, when I did this, I picked the artist Josephine Wall, who does these really intricate, detailed fantasy paintings, and I painted a still life that I tried to base off her style as much as I could. So again, picking a subject matter that is completely different from their style. And what I think this helps you do is, instead of, again, just copying their work, it helps get you in that headspace of breaking down what exactly makes up their style, what colors they're using, what techniques they're using, what materials they're using, so on and so forth, and figuring out how to apply that to any subject matter. And when I did it, granted, it does not look super close to her style. I did it on a very limited amount of time, and it was a school project, but I did learn so much from doing this. So this is something I really strongly recommend if you're trying to develop a style. And don't just do it with one artist, go ahead and do it with several artists, do it with many artists, and figure out what different things you learned, what different things you enjoyed, what different things challenged you, and make a mental note of that and figure out how you can incorporate those elements into your art going forward. So another really great way to study from other artists is to create mood boards. And by this I mean find a picture of something you want to draw, or have some sort of reference of your subject matter that you want to draw, like a realistic photo or the physical object in front of you, and then find several, like 3 to 5 artists who have those elements in their artwork that are elements you're trying to incorporate into your art, different artists that you like their style, and create a mood board with not necessarily the same subject in that they've done, but just pictures of their art. And then try and identify, again, what elements you're trying to incorporate, and pick different elements from each of those artists and incorporate it into your drawing. And I have found that this is a great way to, A, prevent yourself from just copying one artist style, and using what you've learned in different elements to develop your own style. So that is something that has helped me a ton, and it's probably my favorite out of all of these exercises. So I'd definitely go ahead and give that one a try. So now that we've gone over all of those steps, before you go, I do just want to leave you with a few final thoughts. The first one being that these are just things that I have discovered along my art journey and my journey of developing my style that works for me. They might not all necessarily work for you, so do what resonates with you, but I would recommend at least giving all of these things a try. The other thing is that these are not, one-time things. These are things that are meant to be done repeatedly. Again, that element of practice. So don't just do it once and then expect you're going to have your perfect style developed. These are things that, as you continue to progress, continue coming back to these same exercises and doing them and seeing what new things they can help improve in your own art style. The other thing I want to say quickly before you go is that remember, developing your art style, just like anything else in your life and anything else in your artist journey, is not a destination you're trying to reach. I know you might think it is, but really your style is going to continue to develop and change as you do as a person and as an artist. So developing your style should be a journey and not a destination. That being said, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you got something out of this video. If you did, I would love if you would comment below, and if you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.